Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm coming at you with a labor and delivery video. Now, my labor and delivery was via Vbac, vaginal birth after C-section, which was extremely shocking and exciting and just the best moment of my life, in all honesty. I truly believed that I was going to have a repeat C-section. I wanted a Vbac, but I was absolutely certain, just based off of how my last labor and delivery went with my son Wesley, that I was gonna have a repeat C-section. But this is a success story. Everything went well. I had a Vbac, and I am so excited to share this special story with you guys. Let's get into the story. Now, one afternoon, I woke up from my nap and I felt this gush come out of underneath me. And so I went to my husband, who was on the computer, and I said, babe, you need to come to the bathroom right now with me. Went to the bathroom, checked my underwear, thinking it was my water, but it was in fact blood. So it wasn't enough that I was alarmed. I was more so like, you know, that's enough blood to be like, okay, what is that? I knew about bloody show, so I thought it was probably that. I had been feeling the baby move, so I wasn't concerned, but I still thought, okay, let's call my nurse and see what she says. So my nurse said, okay, I think you should go into labor and delivery and just get checked. Any blood, any sign of blood this far along in the pregnancy, which I was 37 weeks, should, you know, be evaluated by a doctor. And so that's exactly what I did. I went into the hospital with my husband and they checked me. They said, okay, everything is fine. Your baby, they checked the baby, everything was fine, and they sent me home. So I was like, yeah, you know, obviously, like, I'm not gonna go into labor naturally. Like, I didn't with Wesley, why would I with this pregnancy? So I just kind of went about my day with my husband, but I was still kind of excited at the fact that I had a bloody show, because I didn't have that with Wesley. I didn't lose my mucus plug with Wesley, and I didn't have any contractions until they induced me. So to have just that honestly felt like a win. I was like, oh cool, you know, my body did something. So later in the evening, I started having contractions. And I told my husband, I'm like, oh my God, I'm having contractions right now. My body just naturally started having contractions. And my husband's like, okay, what do we do? Do we go to the hospital? I'm like, no, we have to wait till they're 10 minutes apart. Now, for me, it was 10 minutes because I tested group B positive. And so they suggest that you, or recommend that you go in 10 when your contractions are 10 minutes apart. So this way they can administer 2 doses of penicillin so that it doesn't get transferred on to your baby. So I was like, we gotta wait. And you know, some of them were very, very painful, and then others weren't so painful. So they were kind of like very inconsistent in terms of like level of pain, but they were coming 10 minutes apart that night. And so I told my husband, okay, like, we gotta go to the hospital. It's very, very painful and on and off, but there are 10 minutes apart. So I think it's time to go. So we called the nurse, and the nurse said, okay, go in, get checked. There's no harm in getting checked. And we went into the hospital. They checked me. They said I was 2 centimeters dilated. I was like, holy crap. But she said, that's not enough to administer you guys into the hospital, so you're gonna have to go home. And she gave me some meds and kind of just sent me on my way. And I was like, okay, I can't believe I'm 2 centimeters dilated. This is crazy, but nothing's gonna come of it. Nothing can come of it. I mean, come on, this is me. Something's gonna happen, and I'm gonna get a C-section. So I went home and I was in pain. I took the medicine. She said, it's probably gonna put you to sleep. Well, it didn't. I didn't get sleep because that night I was in so much pain. I was screaming in pain. I told my husband, I was like, I don't know what to do. Should I go into the hospital? They're very inconsistent, and now the pain level was consistent, but the contractions itself, like the amount of time between the contractions, weren't consistent. So it was just a big mess, and I was like, this is just ridiculous. And my poor son, my 3-year-old, was in the other room sleeping, and he woke up to me just screaming in pain, and he was so concerned. He was crying, he was running out of his room, and I just felt so bad, but I couldn't hold it in. I was in so much pain. I felt like I was dying. I mean, anyone who has given birth before will understand that contractions are just very, very painful. And my husband was tracking the contractions all night for me because I just wasn't in the shape to do it. I just was laying there trying to sleep and then waking up screaming, trying to sleep, waking up screaming. And that was kind of my night. And he was, oh, is it going? Okay, is it done? And he was tracking them for me on a free app. I mean, there's a ton of them that you guys can find on your phone. Free apps. I don't know how men and women tracked contractions before. It feels like it'd be so stressful and like not as accurate to use a pen and paper, you know? So it was nice to have a free app that we were able to download. And yeah, that was kind of our night, me screaming and him tracking it, me screaming and him tracking it. So then it came to be about 3 a.m. and they were pretty consistent. They were about actually 5 minutes apart, and they went from being like 10 minutes apart to 7 minutes apart to like 5 minutes apart very quickly. So I said, okay, hubby, like I think it's time to go to the hospital. And whenever I went to stand up, I was in so much pain when the contractions came on that I dropped to the ground. My body was shaking. And I like to think that I'm not, like, I can handle pain pretty well, but I don't know, these contractions were something else. So we packed up the hospital bag as quickly as we could and we headed out the door. We dropped my son off. Oh, and yeah, the first time we went to the hospital, we had my son with me when we got checked for the bleeding. And then the second time we also had him, but then the third time we actually decided to drop him off at a family friend's house because I figured, you know what, even if this is not it, I don't think that I can be taking care of Wesley, and he is having really bad experience with this whole thing, so I think it's better if he just sleeps somewhere else. And luckily we had a family friend, because my brother hadn't been in town yet, who was supposed to watch Wesley during my labor and delivery. So we drop Wesley off and we get to the hospital, and the woman puts me in a room. She checks me. I'm 3 centimeters dilated. 3 centimeters. So she says, we're not going to admit you. We're going to keep you here for 2 hours and see if you progress. If not, we're going to send you home. She left the room and I started to cry. I looked at my husband dead in the eyes and I said, I am not leaving this hospital. There is no way that I'm leaving this hospital. I am in way too much pain. I'm not leaving. So they just left me in this room, guys, for 2 hours, crying and screaming out. They didn't give me any medicine. They gave me a juice box, but that was it. And I was just in this room. I didn't have a blanket. I didn't have a pillow. I was lying on this cold bed in this tiny room, and they were just waiting until I progressed, or if I progressed. So 2 hours pass and I'm just like cranky, not feeling well, crying, screaming, you know, all of that stuff. They finally come in and they check me. I'm 4 centimeters dilated, guys. 4 centimeters, that's it. She wanted me to get to a 5. But luckily she decided that she was going to admit me anyways, just based off of, you know, the consistency and the pain I was having. She decided, you know what, this is your second pregnancy, labor, let's put you in and, you know, get this thing going. So that's exactly what they did. They admitted me and I was so happy. I cried. I told my husband, you know, I'm so thankful that they're admitting me right now, because I would not have been able to go home. Put me in the bed and I was still screaming in pain. They asked me if I wanted epidural. I said, heck yes. So they administered that without any problems, put it in my back, laid me back down, and suddenly I felt so much better. I laid back and I slept and I relaxed and I enjoyed my time in the hospital. I had a great nursing staff. The second they admitted me, I swear it had a huge turnaround. It went from a horrible experience in this tiny room with no blanket, just miserable and in pain, to being treated like a queen. And the nurse who was taking care of me knew what I had been through in the past 2 days, so she was like taking just really good care of me and gave me a really good epidural. So I was very thankful for that. So we were sitting in the bed for multiple hours and I was getting checked and there was just very little progress. So they decided to induce me. At that point, I agreed to it. They gave me a very little amount of Pitocin, and suddenly things were rolling. After a few hours, they checked me and I was at 8 centimeters dilated. And the nurse was very excited. I was happy, hubby was happy, and I was like, I can't believe that I dilated to 8 centimeters. I did not think that was possible after having a C-section. I really didn't. But I will say that in the back of my mind, I was still thinking, I am going to have a C-section. I made it to 8. You know, I might even get fully dilated, but that baby is not coming out of my vagina. I was sure of it. You know, and I even looked at my husband and I'm like, yeah, this is great and really cool and exciting that I was able to dilate this much, because I didn't with my son. But it's not happening, so don't get it like too excited. Like, don't get, you know what I mean? Like, this is not happening. So after a few hours, the doctor comes in and decides that she's gonna break my water. I said, yeah, sure, let's do it. Let's get this thing rolling. You know, I want this baby out, you know, and after they break my water, typically like, that's like the last thing that they can do before they bring you in for the C-section. So I figured, okay, you know, she's gonna break my water. She's gonna come back in a few hours and she's gonna say, okay, it's time for your C-section. So I was like, yeah, sure, break the water. She breaks the water. Oh, okay, look, a lot's coming out, very clear. This is great, good. She leaves. The nurse comes in and she's kind of messing around with the bags. Also, I will, just a little side note here. Penicillin going into your arm burns like crazy. It is just like your whole arm just feels on fire. If your nurse doesn't do this for you, get your nurse to give you a damp cloth or just something to put on your arm, because that makes a world of difference, and it did for me. My nurse was great and I was so thankful that she had given me something to kind of help soothe that. Anyway, so she was kind of like fiddling with my IV and everything. Oh yeah, I also had some, yeah, anyway, so she was fiddling with the IV and yeah, she was fiddling with the IV, and all of a sudden I'm kind of like laying on my side and I feel something like going on down there. Not even like 10 minutes after they break my IV or break my water, I feel like movement in my vagina, and I'm just like, oh, it's probably just my water coming out, you know, like, okay, I'm just sitting there, the liquid. And then a few minutes pass, my nurse is still kind of like fiddling with stuff in the computer, and I kind of look over to her and I was like, you know, I feel like something's like moving or coming out down there. It's probably just, you know, like liquids, but like, can you check? And she's like, oh yeah, sure, we'll just have a look. So I'm on my side and she just kind of like takes a peek, like moves my legs and like takes a peek and a feel, and she's like, okay, yeah, there's a head. And I'm like, what? So she calls the doctor in, and the doctor comes in and it's like, okay, they're bringing all the baby stuff in, and we're like, we're gonna have a baby. And I'm just like, hey, wait, what are you talking about? And she's like putting up the leg things and she's like, put your legs in here, let's get going. And I'm like, wait, okay, slow down, like what are you talking about? And it just happened so fast. Like, she called the nurse in, she called the doctors in. They came in, they stuck up the leg things, whatever those are called. I put my legs in and she's just like, yeah, there's a baby that's gonna be coming out of here. You're fully dilated and baby's ready to come out. So I was like, okay. And they're like, Dad, do you wanna come take a look? And I'm like looking at my husband like, and he's like, yeah, sure. And he looks and he's like, oh, okay. And then they're like, do you want to look? And I'm just like, the curious part of me was just like, sure, you know, I have to see. So they brought a mirror over and put it between my legs, and I saw his head that was full of hair, just kind of crowning, about to come out. And it was a sight to behold. It was very cool. I am so glad that I decided to get past that like weird, awkward feeling I was feeling about looking at myself in that way, and I just did it. And it was a really cool, slightly disturbing, but very cool and just emotional moment. So yeah, and then before long, she's like, all right, let's push. So I kind of looked at my husband and I was just like, yeah, this baby's not coming out. Like, I've heard of stories where, you know, people would be pushing and pushing, and then they'd go in for an emergency C-section. So honestly, at this point, even though I saw the head, I still thought that I was gonna go in for an emergency C-section because I just thought there was no freaking way. My legs were up and she was telling me to push, and I pushed 3 pushes and he was out. And I don't know. I got 2 stitches. I didn't even tear, I just, there was like a little like cut, and they stitched it up no problem. And yeah, baby Liam was out and healthy. He was 6 pounds, 12 ounces. And it was so amazing, guys. The fact that I was able to experience a vaginal birth makes me feel so blessed and so thankful that it went as smoothly as it did. I am just very, very happy and feel very fortunate to have been able to deliver with the people I did and how I did. And that's about it. I mean, that's my labor and delivery story. You know, they put Liam on my chest, and Jarrett cut the cord. We did skin to skin, and he latched on and breastfed wonderfully and was a perfect little angel baby the entire time, just eating and sleeping and barely fussing at all. And it was just an amazing, great time spent in the hospital once I was admitted. So that is my labor and delivery story. If you guys have any questions at all, please leave that in the comment section below. Sorry if I kind of seemed weird at points or all over the place, but I am talking to a camera, so it's kind of like, it's hard to keep like the conversation going when you're not talking to someone, you know what I'm saying? It's just a little bit weird, and it takes some getting used to. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this and found it, you know, not educational, but like gives you hope if you're hoping for a VBAC, because it is possible, guys. Excuse me. So good luck with your labor, mamas, and I will see you in my next video. Probably going to be posting a 1-month postpartum, and I'll post some clips with Liam. And yeah, look out for my next video. Bye, guys.